And Masechet Yoma, Daf 73. We plan to finish the 7th Perek and begin the 8th Perek. The last Mishnah of the 7th Perek, I have up on the screen here, mentioned the clothing of the regular Kohen, which is 4, and Kohen Gadol, which is 8, and then added that Be'elu nishalin be'urim veTumim, that in order to ask a question of the Urim veTumim, which we'll discuss a lot today, you need to be wearing the 8 clothing. So Kohen Gadol can do it. We'll actually see some other people that wear, other Kohanim that wear 8, besides the Kohen Gadol. So this will be interesting. And we mentioned that the Urim veTumim is only used for public matters by a king, by a bedin, and someone that the Sibur needs. So, so with that in mind, we're going to talk about the Urim veTumim. Now, usually, most of the cases of Urim veTumim were regarding war. Should we go to war or not? Now, the Kohen who went out to war with them was a special Kohen called Mashuach Milchama. He was anointed, especially to go out to war. He would be the one, it says in Devarim Perechaf, that would go out and say, don't be afraid, Hashem will be with you. He was their spiritual support while they were there. And so presumably he would be the one that would ask the Urim veTumim. If so, obviously he has to be wearing the 8 garments, right? Because this is part of the Urim veTumim, is part of the Choshen. So this is interesting that you have someone who's not Kohen Gadol and yet is wearing the garments of 8. Our question now, today is going to be, since this Mashuach Milchama seems that he can wear the clothing of 8, can he also perform like a Kohen Gadol? Right? Can he go on Yom Kippur and start doing the things because he's wearing the big day Kohen Gadol? Does that automatically authorize him to actually act like a Kohen Gadol? That's a very interesting concept. Let's see. Ki ata Rav Dimi Amar, when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, he said, probably quoting Rabbi Yochanan, Begadim sheKohen Gadol meshamesh bahen, meshuach milchama meshamesh bahen. The clothing of the Kohen Gadol, also the one anointed for war, can wear them and can use them and can mishamesh. He can actually do the avodah in Kodesh Kodashim like the Kohen Gadol. Shenemar ubigdei hakodesh asher laharon iyu lebanav acharav. Mi shevara bigdula acharav. This is a pasuk regarding the consecration of new Kohanim, as says that the consecration of the begadim. And so these begadim will be for Aaron. He's the first Kohen Gadol. And then you give them to Banav. And so while you give it to Banav, obviously, they're going to be the next Kohanim Gedolim. The word Acharav, what do you need the word Acharav for? So Acharav means not only children, but second in line, second in greatness. Who's second in greatness to the Kohen Gadol? That's the war Kohen. Okay, so therefore, since the Kohen Gadol can wear them, so too, Mashuach Milchama can also wear the 8 garments. Now we're going to have a series of about 3 questions on this thesis. First one, Mativ Rav Ada bar Abba, Amri la Kedi. Some say it was said by Rav Ada bar Abba, some said anonymously. Yachol yeheh beno shel Mashuach Milchama meshamesh tachtav, kederech shebeno shel Kohen meshamesh tachtav. This Braita asks, can it be that just like Kohen Gadol, who gets, when he dies or he retires, it goes to his son, can this be that Meshuach Milchama also goes from father to son? Is that an inherited position or not? Or, once the Kohen Meshuach Milchama dies and you just pick someone else? That's the question. And the Gemara answers, Talmud Lomar, Shiv'at Yamim Il Basham HaKohen Tachtav Mibanav Asher Yabo Elohel Mo'ed. This is for instructions for the consecration of the Mishkan. It says for 7 days he will wear them, the Kohen will wear them, under him from his children, who comes to Ohel Moed. So we specify only someone who can come to Ohel Moed, which is understood by the rabbis as the Kodesh Kodashim. So in other words, the inheritance of the position only belongs to the Kohen Gadol, who can go into Ohel Moed, Kodesh Kodashim, and not to Meshuach Milchama. So therefore, that he is not inherited. So what can we learn from this Braita? If in fact he's allowed to go into Kodesh Kodashim, then it would also be inherited. From the fact that the Braita says, no, the Mashuach Milchama is not an inherited position, because he can't go into Kodesh Kodashim. So there you go. He doesn't go into Kodesh Kodashim. We're assuming here that wearing the 8 clothing goes hand in hand with going into Kodesh Kodashim. If you can wear them, that must be you can go in also. And that's what gives you permission to do so. So that's the question. It was seen from here now that he cannot go in and does not wear the 8, and that goes against Rav Dimi. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, hachi ka'amar, kol she'ikar meshichato la'moed, yaseh zeh she'ikar meshichato milchama. So Rav Nachman says, when the Braita says that he can go into al-moed, it means that's the main reason for his anointment. That's true of a Kohen Gadol. It's not true of a Mashuach Milchama. So in other words, yes, he can technically go in. It's just since that's not the main reason of his anointment, so it's not going to be inherited. So by saying that, the answer is actually yes, he can go into the Kodesh Kodashim, and we can resolve that Braita, right? Just that it's not his main thing, so it's still not inherited. Okay, so we uphold the original position, the hypothesis of Rav Dimi. Yes, the Kohen Mashuach Milchama can wear 8 and can serve as a Kohen Gadol. Next question. Mashuach Milchama eno mishamesh lo be'arba'a ki Kohen Hedyot ve'lo b'shmona ki Kohen Gadol. According to this Braita, Mashuach Milchama cannot serve in the Bet HaMikdash at all, not wearing 4 and not wearing 8. Okay, this is strange. Now, what is he going to wear? Nothing? So that's what we'll discuss. But anyway, the point is he doesn't wear 8, and this goes against Rav Dimi's hypothesis. So Amar Abaye, Elazar mashvetle. What are you making him like a Israel? He just comes in jeans. What do you mean he's not going to wear anything? So let's explain what this Braita means. Ela ke Kohen Gadol mishum eva, ke Kohen Hedyot mishum ma'alin bakodesh velo moridin. He can't serve like a Kohen Gadol because of animosity. If you can allow the Mashuach Milchama to go in and do everything like a Kohen Gadol, it's like, what is this, competition? You can't have 2 people in charge. It's like having 2 CEOs, 2 rabbis, right? They're going to fight. So therefore, that's the reason why he can't. The point is that technically, midoraita, he could, but only because it's only because of Eva. So like midrabanan, we don't let him, right? But that's how it answers the question. Really, in essence, midoraita he could. He also can't serve with 4 clothing because once you raise him up and you make him Mashuach Milchama and he wears the 8 clothing, you can't demote him now and be only 4 clothing. Like you know what? After someone's president, they don't go back to being a senator, right? So, but they also can't fly in Air Force One anymore. Right. Good. The replacement going also, like, what can he do? What can he do? He can't get in the way too much. Right. You replace him. Right. He can't go down to be a regular Kohen, but is he going to serve alongside and be annoying? Exactly. Okay. So this is the answer to the 73. Okay. That's the answer to the second question. Now, now here's the third question to Rav Dimi's thesis. We're going to bring a long baraita, and in this baraita you'll see there is a Tana, at least one, who doesn't have the rule of animosity because he allows a replacement Kohen to serve. Okay, but yeah, he still does not allow Mashuach Milchama to serve. So there must be another reason besides animosity that the Mashuach Milchama cannot serve, and therefore it's not just the Rabbanan because we're worried about Eva, it's at a fundamental Doraita level. That's what we're going to prove from the following Baraita. But don't lose track of where we are. It's a long Baraita. It's actually a very important Baraita because it gives a list of all the things that differentiate a regular Kohen Gadol from the other types of people that actually once were Kohen Gadol or wear the 8 clothing. The Tanya. Here are the following differences between Kohen Gadol and a regular Kohen. Number 1, Par Kohen Mashiach Upar Haba Al Kol HaMisvot. Those are actually the same thing. It shouldn't be listed twice. So if the Kohen Gadol makes a mistake, then he brings a special pod as a chatat that a regular person would not bring. That's one. Regular Kohanim don't do that. Upad Yoma Kippurim. The pod of Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol brings with his own money. Only he could do that. Asiri Ta'efa. Every day of the year, he brings a special mincha offering. Velo Poreya, Velo Porem. If he's in mourning, he does not let his hair grow wild or tear his clothing like regular people do. Aval porem hu milemata, but he does tear the bottom of his shirt. So he does do a little tearing, but he has to maintain his honor as a Kohen Gadol. Vehejot milemata, or milemala, a regular person, a regular Kohen, regular people tear their shirts on top. Ve'en metameh likrobav, and he does not become tameh for even his close relatives. Umisuvela betula, and Kohen Gadol has to marry a betula. Umuzhad al almana, he cannot marry a widow. Umachazira taroseach, someone who kills by mistake goes to Ida Miklat, and he only comes back when the Kohen Gadol dies. Umakriv onen ve'eno ochel. If he's onen, meaning if he's somewhat experienced the death in his family that day, he still serves. It can make sacrifices, but he doesn't eat them. We learned that from the famous story of Aharon on the day he lost his 2 sons. He didn't eat, and Moshe said, yeah, you're right. Ve'eno cholek. He also cannot take a part of other offerings. On a regular day, he can take any part he wants since he can't eat them. Now, since he said you can't eat them, of course he can't take them. Yeah, but maybe you can say you can take them, eat it tomorrow, if it's a sacrifice that you could eat tomorrow when he's not on it. No, nevertheless, he doesn't even take them on this day. If any piece, even though there's 24 different families that serve, he's allowed to take any part. He gets first dibs, and he can also sacrifice anything. He says, I want to do this sacrifice today. Kohen Gadol can always do it. And he wears 8 garments. But if he comes in and he's tameh, he does not bring a korban, just like a regular person does. He has he follows a different set of rules. He has to do everything on Yom Kippur. Good. That's a fantastic list of all the Kohen Gadol items. Now, that in the first times of the first Bet HaMikdash, Kohen Gadol was anointed with oil. Second Bet HaMikdash, we didn't have the oil anymore, so we couldn't make him consecrated with oil, but rather just by wearing the 8 garments, he became consecrated. So second Bet HaMikdash, even though there was slightly lower level, he does everything except for on all the mitzvot. If he makes a mistake, he doesn't bring that special chatat that a Kohen Gadol would wear. So you didn't have that in the second Bet HaMikdash as long as you didn't have that oil. Okay, now v'chulam nohagot b'mashuach shavad chutz mipad Yom HaKippurim ba'asirit ha'efa. A replacement Kohen Gadol, right? Maybe the Kohen Gadol became tameh, whatever, and he replaced him, and he stays in that level, or an ex-Kohen Gadol, he got older, whatever. He can do all the same things except for the part of Yom Kippur and the daily Asirit Ha'efa. What do you see from this? That there might be 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 people who are walking around with garments of 8 clothing who are eligible to perform everything except for this small list, right? They could do everything in Yom Kippur all year round. They could do all these things. So this proves that this Tana does not have the rule of Eva. Because if you said animosity, that would apply to anybody, and you wouldn't allow anybody else to perform anything. So now we got rid of the Eva answer. And now look at the last part of the Braita. When the Kohen Gadol does it. Then you get a replacement, of course. Yes, and that's okay. Look, you can have one president. He knows if he's sick, the vice president will come in. You can't have the vice president stepping on his toes, calling the shots. Get out of here. Okay, וכולם אין נוהגות במשוח מלחמה חוץ מ5 דברים האמורים בפרשה. And all of these items do not hold for the Kohen Mashuach Melchama, the Kohen who's there appointed just for the wartime. In other words, he cannot do any of these things except for 5 things. What can he do? If he is in mourning, he doesn't do these acts of mourning. He doesn't become tameh for his close relatives. The Mashiach Melchama has to marry betula, Musar almana, and not a widow. ומחזיר את הנוסע כדברי רבי יהודה, חכמים אומרים אינו מחזיר. זה מחלוקת on whether when Mashiach dies, whether the person who killed B'Shogeg can go back or not. Rabbi Yehuda says yes. That's interesting that the guy in Shogeg, he doesn't have to wait till the Kohen Gadol dies. Any of the replacement Kohanim Gedolim, if any of them die, right, he will be okay. And this guy, maybe even the Mashiach Melchama, according to the Rabbi Yehuda. So actually, it would be less than than the lifetime of the Kohen Gadol. So that by itself is interesting. Okay, anyway, we see here that the Mashuach Milchama does not serve in all the functions of a Kohen Gadol. He probably doesn't even wear 8 because that was on the list before. Right? This goes against Rav Dimi, and he doesn't wear 8. He doesn't serve as a Kohen Gadol, and it's not because of Eva, because if it was Eva, then the replacement Kohen Gadol also would not be allowed to serve. So here we have a Braita that goes against the teaching of Rav Dimi. We're going to answer the question as follows. This is an important psychological principle. He does not have, people do not have animosity when it's someone that's at the same level. But if it's someone inferior to him, then he does have animosity. Right? When you see someone who's as good as you, get the promotion or whatever, or works alongside you, okay, you're fine. But if someone who's lower level, but he gets to be the same as me, no, he's feel jealous of him. I feel hatred towards him. So a replacement Kohen Gadol, that's fine. If he's going to serve and do things, he doesn't feel animosity. But Kohen Mashiach, no, he would feel animosity. And so now this answers our question. Fundamentally, midoraita, even a Kohen Mashiach Milchama can wear 8 and can serve, but because of Eva, because he was never considered worthy enough to be a Kohen Gadol, he's just, he goes out to war, he's like a chaplain. And so, but he's not the same level. So technically he could, but that explains all these baraita. That's why he does it. Mashiach Shabbat is okay. He's not jealous of him. For the items they can't do, why can't he do those? Those are special. You reserve for him a few things that he can do, right? President is not. It doesn't have animosity to previous presidents or rabbi emeritus, right? Those levels can get along, but you can't have two of the same. You can't have a younger, smaller person being as the authority. Okay. Yetev Rabbi Abhu v'kamarla lehashmata mishemed Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Abhu also was saying the same halacha in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that the Mashuach Milchama wears 8 and serves like a Kohen Gadol. Ahadrinhu Rabbi Amev Rabbi Asela Paihu. When Rabbi Abhu said this, these two rabbis turned their faces away. Right? You can imagine like a classroom, and they turn their chairs and they face the other way. In other words, they reject this teaching. We don't like that. Some say the teacher was not Rabbi Abu, but rather it was Rabbi Chia bar Abba. But the students are the same students. Anyway, they turned their face. Question, we want to try to figure out which story is correct. Who was teaching this? So Matkif Ladat Papa, Bishlama Rabbi Abu Mishum Yekara Debe Kesar. Rabbi Abu was a very important person. He answered to the emperor himself, and so it makes sense why they would turn their faces to object to him in a passive way, because they didn't want to directly confront him. But if the story was about Rabbi Chia, he did not have any powerful authority. They would have just told him to his face, no, Rabbi Yochanan never said that, you're totally wrong. So therefore, it makes sense that in fact the story is about Rabbi Abu. So we can, by figuring out the background story, we can clarify which version of the story is correct. Next. Oh, he has a different version when he came from Eretz Yisrael, probably also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, where he said what we're talking about is when he's consulting the Urim veTumim. That's when the Kohen Mashiach Milchama wears the 8, right? So we're not talking about serving in the Bet HaMikdash and doing Yom Kippur or anything like that, right? Just only specifically for that, which makes a lot of sense, as I mentioned before, that Urim veTumim, like basically almost every story we have about it is asking, should we go to war or not? They need to do that in the field, right? What do we do now? Should we go this way? Should we fight today? Should we fight yesterday? Kohen Gadol's back in the Bet HaMikdash or in the Mishkan. He's not coming along with them every time. So, but when he wears that, he has to wear the 8. Okay, that's what we're talking about. No, there must have been more than one set, right? There could have been more than one set, and you still have these other Kohanim that were substitute Kohanim. They were wearing the 8 also, and so yeah, you have more than one set. Okay, So Tanya Namehachi. In fact, we have a Braita that backs this up. After the other understanding, we had to really jump through hoops. There were 3 different Braitot that rejected it. I mean, we answered it, but with difficulty. So this one makes more sense. Begadim shekohen gadol meshamesh bahen, meshuach milchama nish'al bahen. The clothing of the Kohen Gadol that he wears as in service all the time, the Kohen HaMashiach Milchama, he can use them only for consulting the Urim veTumim. Fine. Now that makes a lot of sense. Okay. So now that we mentioned the Urim veTumim, and the Mishnah already mentioned them, we're going to analyze how they work. Tenor Rabbanan. Yes, Shoalim. How do you ask a question of the Urim veTumim? Shoel panav panav kelape nish'al, v'nish'al panav kelape shechina. The one asking the question, let's say it's a king, right? Or a king would ask, should I go to war or not? He would be facing the nish'al, the Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. And the Kohen Gadol would be facing the Shekhinah. How does that work? 2 interpretations. Either he's facing down, the Shekhinah is represented on the Choshen, and so the king would be let's say, right, the king would be facing the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol is facing down. Or another interpretation is that the king would be standing behind, facing the Kohen, and the Kohen would be facing the Aron. Like maybe if they were in the near the Aron, then they would be facing that way. Kelapei Shekhinah makes sense. It was towards the Aron. This is interesting because we're going to talk about what's the relationship between prophecy and the Urim veTumim. Does it work through prophecy, or is it just something else? We're going to see it does work through prophecy, and this would make sense that he's facing Shekhinah, facing the Aron with the Kerubim, which is the source of Nevuah. If not war, no. Well, still, wherever you are, you could face east, you could face, you face towards, or the Aron they took with them. Very good. Yeah, I mean, in the original, in the first Bet HaMikdash, right? Okay, good. So Rambam says the second one, that he's actually behind, facing his back. Hashoel Omer, Erdof Acharei Hagedud Hazeh. Now here's an example. The questioner might say, should I pursue this army? This is a real example from Shemuel chapter 30 in the city of Siklag, when David and his men went out to fight. They came back and they found Amalek came and took all of their wives and children. And then David said, oh my God, look, they took all their wives and children. Everybody was crying. Everybody was about to rebel against David. And so he wanted to know, should we run after them? Will we catch up to him? And so he asked that question. So that would be a sample question. And the Kohen Mashiach Milchama would say, or Kohen Gadol, if he was there, would say, God said, he would consult, and he would say, yes, go and you will succeed. That's one Tanakama. That's not the answer that's said in Shemuel. This is just giving an example. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, En Sarif Lomar Ko Amar Adonai Ela Alev Asach. It doesn't say God told me to tell you. It just says, yes, it's obvious he's quoting God if he's there and saying that. Good. En Shoalin Bekol Shemar V'Sha'al Lo. So this is from the pasuk in Bemidbar, which is the source of all this. And the pasuk says, "Ifnei Lazar Kohen Ya'amod v'Sha'al Lo b'Mishpat Ha'Urim Lifnei Adonai." Al piv yeseu, al piv yabo. You see from that pasuk already, going and coming means going to war or coming. Vehu v'chol bnei Israel ito, hu v'chol bnei Israel ito v'chol ha'eda. So it says v'sha'al lo. So that means when you say it, don't ask in a loud voice. You're asking just to him. Like you don't announce it in public. I'm just talking to you right here. I don't have to scream in a loud voice. And also don't say it so quietly that you can't hear. You're asking him before God. So it's the same way that you pray. And we learned from Chana, right? She was mumbling or audibly, but you couldn't quite hear the words. Ali thought she was drunk. And so that's how we learn in Amidah. Also, we should say the words loud enough that we could hear it ourselves, but not loud enough that you could hear it across the room. I remember praying next to Chamadeh Yosef. You could hear almost every word that he would say. Right, not too loud. So in other words, in a whisper, it's interesting. So we're saying that the question that you're asking the Kohen Gadol is almost like a prayer, right? Like, should I go? Like, well, can you help us succeed? Right? It's not just a question. It's also has an element of a request in it. Good. And shoalim shnei devarim ke'echad. Some etiquette about using the Urim veTumim. Don't ask two questions at once. It seems that it was a yes or no issue. All the examples that we see, pretty much all the examples are all yes or no questions. You're not going to get like a whole sentence answer. So it's not good to ask two questions at once because then, all right, there might be one yes, one might be no. And if someone does ask two things, they're only going to get one answer anyway. And the answer will be to the first question if they ask two. Hayasgiruni ba'alei ke'ilah biyado hayared Shaul v'gomer yomer Adonai yered. So this was when David and his people were hiding out in a place called Ke'ilah, and it's worth reading all the Pesukim here so that we can see it. So he's hiding out in Ke'ilah. Give me a second. Okay. Here we can see all this. Okay. David ki alav Shaul macharish hara. So David knew Shaul's coming after him, and so he told Ebiatar Kohen, bring the ephod. Okay, good. He's bringing the Urim veTumim. Vayomer David Adonai Elohei Yisrael shema abdecha. I heard that Shaul is coming to attack me in Keilah and is going to wipe out the whole city just to get me. Right? People of Keilah are harboring me. So my question is, two questions. Are the people in Keilah, are they going to give me up, deliver me into his hands, or are they going to protect me? That's question number one. And second question, is Shaul even going to come here at all to Keilah? Now, they see the questions are out of order. First, you should ask, is he coming to get me? If he is coming, are they going to protect me, or are they going to give me up? So, Adonai Yered. God's answer is he's going to come down. So even though David asked out of order, I guess he was confused when he asked in the wrong way. But nevertheless, Hashem answered the first question that he should have asked. Right? Yes, he's coming. And then the next question says, "V'yomer David, hayaskiruni ba'alei ke'ilah otiv et anshe b'yad Shaul." Are the city people going to give me up? And Vayomer Adonai, Yaskiru, yes, they're going to give you up. In other words, you better run. Okay. So we see from here, we learn the laws. And should only ask one question. How do we know? Hashem only answered one question. He had to ask the other one again. And he asked out of order, but Hashem fixed it. That question. You said that Urim veTumim will answer only the first question first. And in this case, it actually answers the second question. So we explained David Sha'al Shelo Keseder, Ve'achzir Lo Keseder. Even though David asked the question out of order, nevertheless, it was understood what he meant, and the answer was given in order. After he realized, oh, I asked out of order, so then he went back and asked the first question that he should have asked second. They're going to deliver, you better run. Okay, great. So we learned from the actual example the proper way to do it. Now, if you really need to ask two questions and you're really in a rush and it's like emergency, then yes, you can do that. And that's the story I said before, that they took their wives and children. Amalek took their wives and children, and he says, should I run after them? Will I reach them? Will I succeed? And God answered them all at once. So here you see, go, you're going to reach them and you're going to succeed. So they answered, but maybe it's really all one question, kind of compound question. Now we're going to compare prophecy to Urim veTumim. A prophecy sometimes is retracted. If a prophet says, this great destruction is going to come on the city next year, sometimes they may make teshuvah and it won't happen. But Urim veTumim for sure happens, whether it's good or bad. And it doesn't change because it says b'mishpat ha'orim. It's a mishpat. It's like a judgment. A judgment is not overturned. But why should there be a difference? Why should it be better than prophecy? Maybe because prophecy often is far in advance. You have a chance to make teshubah. Whereas usually Urim veTumim, you're asking on the spot on the day of war, right? So there's no time. Either if you're not worthy, then you can't do anything about it. They would go. Right. Well, right. If they okay, they might ask the prophet also, but this is another way to do it. Lama nikra sheman Urim veTumim. Why is it even called Urim veTumim? The answer: Urim sheme'irin et dibrehen, Tumim shemashlimin et dibrehen. Urim because it illuminates their words, and Tumim because it fulfills the word. The words always come true, so they're enlightening and fulfilling words. So that's the derivation here. Scholars offer another possibility. Instead of reading it Urim, read it something like Arurim and Tamim. It does say Tamim in Shemuel when they're trying to find out who stole who ate the honey. It says Tamim there. So in that case, it would be who was cursed and who was innocent, right? Some kind of a lottery the divinely guided lottery. So that's an alternate derivation. But anyway, according to the way we have it punctuated, this is the meaning. Okay, now this is regarding the story of Pelegish Begiv'ah, when all Bnei Israel go and fight Binyamin, right, for what happened there. It says that they went 3 times and asked Urim veTumim. And the first 2 times, they lost the war. And only in the 3rd battle did they win. And so the question is, like, what happened over there? So here's the Pesukim, if you want to see them. They asked, meaning the Urim veTumim. And they says, should we go and fight with Binyamin? Who should go fight first? Yehuda. Which means, yeah, go, right? And then they lost. And then they went and they asked again, should we go again? And they says, Alu Elab, yes, go. And then they lost. And then finally, the Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron, Omer lefanav be'imimahem, Alsif od aset melchama Binyamin, achai im echdal, Omer Alu imachad etenenu biyadecha. The last time it says, go up and you will succeed. So you see, the times before, even though the Urim veTumim said, yes, go fight, it didn't say that they were going to succeed. So hem shelo bichanu im lenasech im lenasel. B'achrona shibichanu hiskimu. The first 2 times they didn't ask if they're going to succeed. They only asked, should we go to war? So yes, go to war. But didn't say you're going to. The last time they said, oh, maybe we should add another question. Are we going to succeed? And they said yes. If it not ben Aaron, omed lefanav be'imimahem, lemod haosif od aset amilchama b'nei Binyamin achai achi im echdal. V'ronai alu ki machad etenu be'yadecha. Yes, because you will succeed. Okay, so why did the Urim veTumim say they should go fight if they were going to fail? Well, look, maybe you had to fight. Maybe you had to fight, sometimes you have to lose the battle to win the war, right? So they have to go fight, weaken them, but only on the 3rd time. But it's not that the Urim veTumim was wrong, right? It was, they had to do that. It never said that they were going to win in that battle. Okay, good. Now, Kesad Na'aset. How did it work? How did the Urim veTumim deliver the message? 2 opinions. Rabbi Yochanan Omer Boltot, that the letters would protrude. Whatever letters, yes, no, they would protrude. And the Choshen had all the names of the Shevatim on it. So you have almost all the letters of the alphabet there. Not only did they protrude, they also rearranged themselves so you can actually read it. Otherwise, you don't know the order. Rambam suggests, and Meiri says even more explicitly, that it's not that the letters actually moved around or anything, but rather that the Kohen Gadol would go into a state where in his eyes, he kind of saw, and like in the movie, things move. But if you went right next to him and you were looking at it, you wouldn't see anything different. So in other words, it's a vision. But seeing the letters would help him concentrate and figure out what the message was. Okay, question. Look at all the names of the Shevatim. There's no Sadi in it. So what if the message has a Sadi in it? How are you going to say that? On top also had the forefathers, so there's a Sadi there. There's still no Tet in any of the names. I think Tet is the least frequent letter. in the Hebrew alphabet. Shibtei Yeshurun Kitib Sham. As heading, it said Shibtei Yeshurun. These are the tribes of Israel. So you have a tet also, no problem. Now, question. Metibe. Kol kohen she'eno medaber beruach hakodesh u'shechina shora alav en sho'alin bo. Sharei shal sadok v'alata lo, Ebiatar ve'lo alta lo. Shene'emar v'yal Ebiatar ad tom kol ha'am. And so this is very interesting that a kohen who is not worthy of receiving ruach hakodesh, and upon whom the Shekhinah does not rest, he shouldn't ask the Urim veTumim, because how do we see this? Sadok was on a high level, and he was able to ask Urim veTumim, and it worked. Eviatar tried it, and it didn't work. And we see that because it says Vayal Eviatar, he went up. That is taken to mean that he was fired, that he couldn't be Kohen Gadol anymore because he wasn't on that level. So how does this work? If he's a prophet, then why do you need the Urim veTumim? Why do you need prophecy? The answer is actually, the Urim veTumim help out the prophecy, or the prophecy helps out the Urim veTumim. It's an assistant, it's a tool to help out, to help receiving prophecy. But it's not. It doesn't work independently. It only works through prophecy. Like a prophet might need music to help him get into the mode. He might need to sit under a tree, right? You need a nice atmosphere. So this is just a device to help, so he can see the letters, and that inspires him. So that's very interesting. Don't think it works through magic or spirits or anything like that. It actually is a form of nevuah. Okay, so that's fascinating. And last paragraph of the Perek, Ben Shalin El Elamelech. Elamelech, the Urim veTumim was only used for national purposes. Only a king or the head of the court can ask questions of the Urim veTumim, or for communal need. How do you know this? So when it says that they would ask him, who asks him? Who? That refers to the king. And all Bnei Israel, so that would be the Kohen anointed for war. So he would ask regarding things that have to do with the whole community, should they go to war or not. And Kol Ha'edah is the Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin can ask questions, but this is not for personal use. I can't find my keys. This is only for national use. Adan alach ba'alo kohen gadol. We complete the seventh Perek. We could wonder why the seventh Mishnah, the seventh Perek, ends with this on this note. Why is it talk about? Well, talk about Bigadim. You have to know about that. And then Urim veTumim. Perhaps it's saying that the whole Yom Kippur service, it creates a connection between Hashem and Bnei Israel through the Kohen Gadol. And Urim veTumim is also another thing that creates a direct connection of communication, kind of like the scarlet string. It also highlights the communal aspect, that the Kohen Gadol is representing all of the people, just like the Urim veTumim, you only use it for a communal need for all the people. So Yom Kippur does have an individual aspect, but really it's essentially about atonement for everybody altogether. All right, and we will now begin the eighth and last Perek of Masechet Yoma, which is not about korbanot, but rather about things that are practical for today. It'll focus on the 5 inuyim, for fasting, and also atonement itself. And the idea is a lot of very important teachings about teshuvah. So we begin. Mishnah. Yoma Kippurim asur b'achila u'b'shtiyah u'b'lechisa u'b'sicha u'b'nat hasandal u'b'tashmish hamita. Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to eat and drink. When we're kids, they said that they counted those as 2 because they didn't want to tell us what tashmish hamita was. But in fact, those are 1. Eating and drinking are together, and washing and anointing with oil, like they would use that as like moisturizer. Wearing sandal, which is the same root as sandal, and here you see in the picture is a sandal from the times of found on Masada, an actual sandal, amazing thing. And usage of the bed, meaning conjugal relations, are all prohibited on Yom Kippur. Those are the 5 inuyim. Now, there are exceptions. A king, it's interesting, that's a nice tie-in to the previous Perek, right? We talked about the king, and now the king again is allowed to wash his face because he's a king. He has to look glorious all the time. He represents the whole nation. He can't look disheveled. Also, a bride, meaning within 30 days of her wedding, also has to look nice for her husband. And so she is also allowed to wash her face even on Yom Kippur. Someone who gave birth recently, within 30 days, she is allowed to wear shoes because the floor is cold. We don't want to get cold, to get sick. They better be Eliezer. However, the sages prohibit. It's not clear if they prohibit only the last one or the last three. Peshat looks like they prohibit all the three, even the king and the bride. But we'll talk about that. What's the minimum amount if someone who eats ketobet, a big date, it's including its pit? Don't eat the pit, meaning the volume of a date with its pit. Someone eats that much, they would be chayav. Or someone who drinks a cheekful. If you eat from various items, a little this, a little that, it all does join together to make that much. And also different drinks. If you have some orange juice and some water and some grape juice, they all come together. And if you had even a little bit of each, but if they come together for a milol ugmav, someone would be chayav. And mistafin. However, you don't add up the eating and the drinking together, which is a good practical halacha. If someone is sick and they need to eat or drink a little bit, they can eat less than a kotebet, kezayit, and drink less than milol ugmav, and even at the same time. And you don't say that one adds to the other, right? They're counted separately. So they're included in one isur, but the measurement is done separately. Okay, let's just begin the Gemara. The Gemara asks, asur, Mishnah said, all these things, Yom Kippur asur ba'achila. Usually the word asur means patur aval asur. You're not allowed to do it, but there's no punishment. What do you mean? Anush karetu. Someone does any of these 5 things, you get karet. Why are you saying only asur? The word asur is there to say if you had less than a shiur, less than the kotebet, or less than milol ugmav, then it would be, that's why it's asur, but no punishment. But if you did more, then it would receive a punishment. Okay. Hold on, we have a general machloket. Less than a shiur. When we say half, it doesn't mean exactly half. Anything less than a full shiur, is that asur midoraita or is it allowed midoraita? I know everybody agrees there's no punishment, right? But is there is there as a sur or not? So all this makes sense if you say asur min Torah. That's why the Mishnah said asur, even according to the Torah, it's asur when it's a chasi shiur. But if you think it's mutar min Torah, then why does the Mishnah mention anything at all? And now we're going to quote the machloket from its source. Chasi shior, Rabbi Yochanan amar asur min Torah. Resh Lakish amar mutar min Torah. So Hanicha Rabbi Yochanan el Resh Lakish ma'ika lememar. So all this makes sense according to Rabbi Yochanan. Was asur min Torah. That's what Mishnah says. If you have less than a shiur, asur. But according to the Resh Lakish, who says less than a full shiur is permitted, so it shouldn't say asur. It should say mutar. The language of the Mishnah doesn't make sense. Our final answer is modeh Resh Lakish asur midrabanan. Even though it's permitted min Torah, it's nevertheless asur midrabanan. So the Mishnah says Yom Kippur asur, it means asur midrabanan. And we'll discuss further this tomorrow. Halacha is actually like the Rabbi Yochanan. The chasi shiur is asur min Torah according to Rambam. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen.